Thanks for tuning in to the Fibrenews podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Ray, and in this episode, I'm joined by Alistair Goulden. Alistair was the co-founder of Swish Fibre. He's been a director at a B2B ISP and also a director at other altnets. Alistair has a wealth of knowledge and experience within the connectivity realm. And in this episode, we talk about everything when it comes to growing out a network and pushing past those footprints. We talk about the technology involved. We talk about the sales process. We talk about his experience in the B2B world. And we also talk about one of his new appointments as a director at Infranomics, which is an AI tool which is supporting both the build aspect and the sales aspect for ISPs. So really, really interesting in that respect. But before we jump into things, I just want to talk about this episode's sponsor, which is Giga Britain. I've been promoting Giga Britain outside the studio, so now I'm really happy that I can promote them inside the studio as well. We recently had Will Goodall on our podcast, so if you haven't listened to that episode, please do jump back. Giga Britain are the wholesale brand to Telcom. They are a national player pushing Ethernet at the complete right price for you, the partner, and they've also got other broadband products like their wireless solution. We also done a tour on a rooftop in London to understand more about their wireless proposition, essentially a wireless Ethernet product which can be installed as quick as 5 working days. So if you need a quick chunky Ethernet product in ASAP, then they've got you covered within their hypercities. So for now, sit back, relax, and I really hope you enjoy this podcast. Any details to reach out to Alistair for the Infranomics piece, which you're going to hear about, is going to be in the body of this description. Thank you for listening.
You ready?
Let's go.
Good. Alistair, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure to be here in sunny Devon.
Good. Thank you very much. So, a couple of reasons why I wanted to get you on. One, I wanted to get you on to talk about your previous background, because you've done an array of interesting things within the world of connectivity. We won't focus on the Kodak side, which we had a conversation about before.
Yeah.
That really interests me. And obviously, secondly, is because you've become part of a company that I keep hearing about, and I briefly got to see a demonstration of, and I think that product is worth sharing with our audience, as it seems to be something pretty unique. But from the very start, for me, let's have a little discussion around you, your background, and how you got into the world of fibre, and you can start wherever you like with that, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so I've worked in the IT business for probably quite a long time. I'm not going to say how many years, because it gets embarrassing as you get older.
Yeah.
However, I really cut my teeth with broadband. I worked for an education company that provided broadband to schools, colleges, and a little bit of...
Were they an ISP in their own right, or were they a reseller of like Ethernet connectivity, putting into the schools and then doing the managed services on top?
They were an ISP.
They were?
So basically they bought services from Openreach and Virgin, and then had their own data centers. And through those data centers and the interconnection of those data centers, they connected basically the services came in from Openreach, TalkTalk, Virgin, etc.
Yeah.
And then what we did was we had to do a lot in the middle, because schools have a lot of requirements.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to have a really resilient and robust service for schools, you also need to look after a lot of security on those services.
Yeah.
And also you got to do a lot of filtering as well. So
I'm going to move your mics. I'm going to put it here.
Yeah.
What are we on? Start again? No, we can just carry on as we are. Things never go smoothly in the Fibrenews podcast, so
that's fine.
Sorry about that.
But no, so what it is, for example, and then we handle the transit out to the internet. So whether it's using links or LON app, and then various transit carriers internationally. So it was fully fledged ISP.
What's the benefit of, right, so I come from like traditional telco reseller space where they will sell connectivity, but I never know anyone that becomes their own ISP. They would just take a lease line or an Ethernet connection and then pay a price to whoever the middleman is, get it connected, and then put their services on top. Is there more revenue to be had if you have your own, if you become your own ISP into your own data center?
Yes, as long as you have the right volume. Because once you get over a certain volume, the next customer costs very little to put on.
Yeah.
So once you got your costs and your base costs covered and your investment, your ongoing investment in the technology covered, etc.
Yeah.
The next customer that adds on is just basically it's a variable cost.
So you've got to assume you're going to be able to connect X amount of customers, or each customer is going to bring in X amount of revenue if you've got value-added products to outweigh the benefit of rolling out your own infrastructure.
Yes, correct. So, well, we didn't. It was mainly data centers. We weren't doing the infrastructure in the ground location. It was the data center stuff. So it was all, did a little bit of local loop unbundling, stopped that because it was easy just to take Ethernet connections back to the data centers. But the key thing there was, because that was the schools market, you had a lot of like legal requirements on the support that you gave the schools. So in the school, you've got there's certain things you have to be able to do.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got to be able to monitor, you've got to be able to search for information, you've got to be able to support the school to make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
Because schools have to be safe, and safeguarding in schools is massive. When we hear the word safeguarding, that is not only safeguarding the physical protection of the staff and the students in school, etc. It's all their online presence and everything else. Yeah. So, and that online piece has to link into the schools, sort of like the school governors, the school. I'm trying to think of what the word of it is, but so that online piece has to link into the overall school strategy.
And is that so? The monitoring and all of those USPs that you just said, is that done on a network level, or is that done on an application level within each machine?
It's done on a network level.
Interesting.
So a lot of computing power.
So you're right. Okay. So why? Yeah. So why use? Is that why you would use it on a network level instead of on a machine level, or it's more secure to do it on a network level?
That's a good question actually. The thing on a machine level is machines need to be individually managed, monitored, etc. If you're monitoring the traffic, then you've got you look after the pipe.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to look after the pipe than to actually look after the individual machine.
Well, you can set up alerts and everything else that say if anyone searches Pokemon at 9 o'clock instead of algebra, then something will pop up.
Yes. So there are tools put in place for the school safeguarding team to select various fields. I mean, a child with certain certain development needs will be allowed to see probably different content to, let's say, an A-level fine arts student.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at that and manage it relative to what the school. So you provide the school the tool for the school to use that tool to align its safeguarding needs, and also it knows its pupils as well.
Yeah.
So, but that's all part of sort of safeguarding, and that's quite important.
Interesting. Okay.
And so for when you're like a B2B ISP, which is basically what that was.
Yeah.
Having those value-added services is key when you're having the conversation with the potential customer. Yeah. And so having an established track record, you have to continually invest in. And then when you have new business coming on board, you can give them the examples of what you've already done.
Yeah. And then would you put services on top of that? So you become more of an MSP? Would you?
Yes. The key thing is you've got to have value-added services. Yeah. I mean, as ISP in that piece there, you have to have value-added services. Yeah. Otherwise, what's the difference between just buying basically a dark fiber line from someone?
Yeah, I agree. And do you have to have value-added services? I know we're going to jump a little bit here. Do you have to have value-added services in a residential consumer ISP offering as well? Do you see them as being important?
Yes, I think over time, yes. Okay. I mean, at the moment, we're on that sort of like fiber race, where it's like you've got an old copper-based technology that is in millions of homes still at the moment. Yeah. Fiber's coming along, massive difference, which we've got to get the awareness out there, what the difference is between full fiber and copper networks.
Correct.
You know, a lot of my past with advertising, various campaigns on that in the past.
Our audience might not. So what was the story there?
Okay, so I was one of the founders of Swish Fibre. Yeah. And so what happened was that we were trying to get the message out there. There was a difference between copper services and full fiber services. And we used the advertising slogan, why settle for fake fiber? Yeah. So fake fiber works just, and full fiber just works. Yeah. We did a lot of advertising around that to get attention and awareness, to get people start thinking that there is a difference between full fiber and copper services.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So you were one of the founders of Swish Fibre. Have we jumped too far? So you've done the school stuff, and I'm always like this, I apologise. So you've done the bits in the schools.
And then I went to GigaClear.
Then you went to GigaClear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was at I was at RM Education, and then I went up the road to GigaClear, and worked.
Where's that HQ? I thought they were not. They're not.
No, so GigaClear is on. So RM Education are on Milton Park in Oxfordshire, and just up the A34, about 2 minutes drive, is Abingdon, and that's where GigaClear's headquarters are.
Right, got you.
And so I was retail director. So I looked after their sales, marketing, customer care functions. As the GigaClear sort of split into wholesale retail, and that was part of their agreements with BD UK. They had to split the two, so had to provide a wholesale offering and a retail offering. And I
had a wholesale offering.
Yeah.
And is that part of the BD UK? You have to be half open access. You have to be wholesale.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And the whole network was, so not just the BD UK piece at GigaClear, the whole network was open access for people. So they had various, mainly smaller ISPs providing a service over the GigaClear network.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So they don't really sing about that wholesale open access piece. Or they could do. Maybe I should sing.
I don't. I'm not there anymore. I was in. I left GigaClear in 2018.
Fine.
Summer 2018, and I couldn't answer that question. Actually, genuinely, I couldn't answer that question.
Okay. So then you've done your bit of GigaClear. So you went from a B2B focused ISP, MSP, then you've got into the consumer world of GigaClear. And then I assume you had an idea thinking, actually, I can probably go and do this ourselves. Was that?
Yeah. So in summer 2018, myself and my co-founder Connor got together, and we had this crazy idea to.
You two meet?
We were neighbours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a beer discussion several times where Connor built stuff and like built houses, built lots of things.
Yeah.
And we thought we could get together and we could build fibre networks for targeting market towns.
Yeah.
Part of that was we knew a lot of people in market towns.
Yeah.
Part of that was the so you look how the funding goes. So you got BD UK sponsoring rural.
Yeah.
And the final 20%.
Yeah.
So, and that's the sort of space companies like GigaClear, Airband, and
so they get the big
county fibre play in.
How does that work when you get, so I report on it all the time. So QuickLine has received X amount of millions, or City Fibre has received. Have they received it? So do they go through a procurement process to say, I think I can connect this many properties in this area and it's going to cost this much? Or is it the government saying, here's a lot of money, can you connect loads of homes, whoever wins it with, like, and then do they give you that in one hit?
It's quite complicated, and I'm not the best person to discuss it with. I think my recommendation would be to get in I know a CFO of a well-known altnet who probably could help you with all of that.
Very good.
But no, in summary, the government are looking to encourage altnets and OpenReach and others to build in those harder to reach areas. And to do that, you've got to try and build a business case because the government funding alone isn't enough. So you've got to look at infill or other opportunities as you do it. For example, because the government might say these properties here need, we're happy to provide some funding for these properties here. There's other properties that are not covered by that, but as you build the trunk network, etc., it opens access up to other properties and you build a whole business case together around that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, so go on. So you got that, you got the BD UK side, then Market Town. Is that the voucher scheme?
No. So what you have is you have the BD UK, and then in cities, you had City Fibre, you had everyone hyper optic, community fibre, all piling into cities because the average distance between a property was less than a metre, less than half a metre. 100%. So Swish targeted market towns where the average distance between a property was between 7 metres and 15 metres.
Okay.
So rural, you could be between 30 and 60 metres on average between a property.
Yeah.
And in towns, between sort of like 7 to 15 metres between properties. And then obviously in cities, you're down to hardly any distance because you've got flats, which sort of like bring everything down to almost next to nothing. So that was our approach.
Mm-hmm.
And we identified a whole number of market towns in the south of England.
Yeah.
And within 6 months of joining up with putting our first spade in the ground, which is after we got funding from Fern, which is part of the who are advised by Octopus Investments.
Yeah.
I'll say how that's.
How long did that process take?
That took quite some time. So We started off and spoke to some. I went and spoke to people in the industry, like from the banking side of it, on what to do, and they said, get yourself a specialist fundraising company, which we did. That was Cameron Barney.
Yeah.
And they said, you have a fee from them, but working with those and your business plans and your proposal, you will be attractive to invest.
And do they take their fee after you've got the investment?
Yeah. Oh, well, it depends on different circumstances, but in our situation, for that sort of raise, that's how we organised it.
And did you have opportunities from multiple lenders, or was from day dot you're like, yeah, happy with that, let's go?
You look at you go on a beauty parade. So you go around giving presentations to numerous different investors.
How many meetings do you reckon you had?
I know exactly how many I had, and I can't tell you, right? But it's quite a lot, right? And they're all at different levels of in the process of investing in full fibre. They're all at different levels of maturity. Let's put it that way. Some knew what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Some were just dipping their toe in because they're part of a global organisation. I tell you one interesting story was we're talking to one investor, and they were really, really keen on what we were looking for. And at the time, we were asking to start Swish up £250 million, and they really like it, but it's too small for us. And he said, we haven't invested ever in anything under £1 billion. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, so that was...
what year is this?
2019, yeah.
And would you call that the peak of the full fibre boom? For new entrants?
Potentially that in the following 6-12 months, yeah. I mean, originally there was probably 4 full fibre competitors to altnets,
yeah,
real ones. So, for example, you obviously had City Fibre, Community Fibre, GigaClear and Hyperoptic.
Yeah.
I mean, Hyperoptic sort of like put fibre to the building and then did a lot of Ethernet throughout the building after that, or coax, whatever.
They're geniuses there. Their uptake, uptake percentage is insane because they go into MDUs where no one's really got any choice. They do really good marketing and they absolutely...
And that's really important, making people aware of what your product is.
Yeah.
And that awareness piece always comes back because I'm a big believer that fibre is just an enabler. So getting together with Swish, getting the funding with Swish, getting Swish started, etc., all comes back to my core, which is, and it's the same when I was at other companies, is that full fibre is an enabler and not the answer.
Okay.
So it enables, it's an enabler, I believe, for economic growth. I know we're building houses and things like that, but I think if you can explain to people, so Swish provided an XGS-PON service, which is 10,000 megabits a second.
What is that? So what is XGS-PON? Does that count for...
The X stands for 10.
The X stands for 10?
Yeah, so it's GPON with an X on the front.
And what is that? Are you buying something under the ground that comes red? What do you know what I mean?
Okay, no.
Fiber cable? Is it what?
No.
I never know. I hope this is going to make me look terrible.
Fine. No problem. So it's PON stands for passive optical network.
Yeah.
Which means basically you transmit light from a place that's got power.
Yeah.
And that light goes all the way to another place that's got power.
Yeah.
Now, the distance the two can travel can be tens of kilometers.
Yeah.
And that's called a passive optical network because there's no power in there.
Yeah.
And G stands for gigabit passive optical network.
Yeah.
And XGS-PON is 10 gigabit passive optical network.
Right. Okay.
And that is basically, that is sort of like, it's a layer in when you're building networks. So when you're building a network, you've got various layers. You've got the base layer is you put a hole in the ground, you put a pipe in the ground,
yeah,
and you have basically duct in the ground.
Yeah.
Then the next layer is you put fibers in those ducts.
Yeah.
And you fuse those fibers together.
Yeah.
With the minimum amount of light loss when you fuse them together, because that's really important. You need to keep the maximum amount of light. You can't afford to lose light.
How would you lose light? When you fuse?
Well, if you fuse the fiber together, it's like two hairs.
Yeah.
And if you fuse it out, you're going to use a light. So, and also you get curvature as well. So you need to make sure you get a minimum amount of light loss, but you need that light to be as pure as possible from one end to the other.
Yeah.
And then once you've got the light on there, you then put the electronics on there. So you can put GPON as your sort of like electronics over the top of it, or XGS PON, and these are the pieces at the end.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
Makes sense.
you have a cabinet, which has got power to it, and that cabinet have what's called an OLT in it.
Yeah.
That's an optical line termination point.
The thing with all the curves of fibre.
Well, it's actually the thing that it looks like you slot computer boards.
Yeah.
And that then transmits data to a property that'll have either a box on the wall, or it'll be inside the router, which is an ONT
device,
optical network termination point.
Yeah, I've got you.
And so this OLT is sending for tens of kilometers this piece of data on the light, provided the fiber's perfect, etc. And it when it gets to this end here, it picks it up at the ONT, and the ONT then transmits it, takes it over to the router, and the router then beams the Wi-Fi around the building.
Yes.
Or if you have Ethernet cables, you can put Ethernet cables around from the ONT, etc.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
Right, actually.
But the big thing with that is, which is really exciting for the future, is once you put fiber in the ground, there's so much more you can do with it. So you can actually transmit terabits of data and picobits, and it's stupid amounts of data, because one piece of fiber, it could maybe today just transmitting white light, but then you can change the wavelength, or dynamic wavelength. And what happens is, in layman's terms, white light doesn't interfere with blue light or red light or green light. So let's say you can transmit 10 gigs on white light. You can probably also transmit 10 gigs on blue, red. So you can see it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Once you have fiber in there, it'll be the endpoints that you change over time. So that's why there's a bit of a fiber race on. Get fiber into the ground, and then you'll be able to just open up to so many services long term. And we're in the foothills of what you can do with full fiber. Absolute foothills. So I have seen tables like this where you've got holographic sports games going on. So a holographic basketball match. So you've got the basketball match, and you've got the players, real players, as holograms on your table.
Where did you see that in Dubai?
It was actually shown at CES.
Oh, really?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and then, well, you imagine what happened with sport generally. Well, anything. I mean, particularly sport, let's say football or something like that. You can actually watch the team on the pitch passing the ball around, and these holograms, different sizes. And the bandwidth required for that can only be done on fiber.
Correct. You know, you're saying that you go to a little cabinet which has to have power. So then do you, as a ISP or a network, do you have an electricity bill with like EDF or something? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
All your cabinets talking about?
Absolutely.
All right, okay. Is it expensive? Like, how much does one catch out? Is it a lot? You don't have to say funds, but like, does it run on a lot of power?
Power consumption is something you concern yourself about. The biggest thing about when you're building networks is the one thing that can delay the network going live is get power to the cabinet.
Would a cabinet be able to run on solar? Is that a dream for the future?
Don't know. I mean, depends how good solar panels are. At the moment, the solar panel can take 400 plus watts. You're going to need kilowatts on solar panels.
Right. Okay. Do you ever have a cabinet like kicked in, like by the youths, or someone drive over one?
Well, that's the thing you have to prepare for. So the biggest problem with cabinets is, particularly some of the rural cabinets, is the fact that you can lose power. You can get a power outage. And all the cabinets that I was part of designing, you had a door on the end that you could open up that was separate to the main innards, because you don't want people inside the main part of your cabinet, and you can plug a generator in and just run the cabinet off a generator.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the cabinets.
So we're talking about big cabinets then?
The green cabinets that you see in the street.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
So they're not small. They're probably about 2 meters by 1.5 meters.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But in one end, you'll be able to open it up, and there'll basically something a location to plug in a generator. I know some of the rural ones. One I used to work for, they had a lot of problems out in the power cuts out in Gloucestershire and Hertfordshire a couple of years ago, and they kept the customers all up and running by teams of people just keeping the generators running. Yeah.
What was the outage cause?
Storms.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, storms are taking down power cables, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And then this part's fascinating for me. So I haven't had a chance to speak to someone about building out a network yet. Right. So you get out there, you lay network, and then that has to terminate into a data center.
Correct.
Right.
So you normally have multiple data centers, minimum 2.
Yeah.
And you
Resilience.
For resilience, absolutely. And in our world, you have to have at least 2 of everything. So, for example, if you can lose the whole network in one data center, and no one noticed because you're resilient. You're at least one time resilient.
Does that happen? You hear a lot of people have outages, and they're like, they've got 9 data centers. It's like, why didn't it switch over? Or could it be something good?
It depends what the outage is, but most outages with a modern design network will flick over instantly. More often than not, it'll be an unexpected sort of non-resilient piece. So my biggest worry always used to be when we were down to one. When we had an outage and one of the data centers was off, or one of the data centers was offline, we've now got no backup, right? So until that one's back up and running, you're worrying a little bit. But when it's back up and running again, days.
Sure.
But and again, as companies grow, you end up with 3, 4, and you work it through.
Yeah.
But with your data centers, you usually split your data center into. Let's say you had 2 data centers. Mm-hmm. You normally split them in half. And half the traffic is here, half the traffic is here, and you have a half spare.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're only moving half the traffic over here, so everything's there in this one data center, and vice versa. So you haven't got everything exposed in one place. How it happens in reality is often not perfect, but mainly problem with data centers is sometimes updates, upgrades, etc. But you should have rollback plans. So it's
why do people have local, national, and national offerings? You know, like City Fibre has like local, national, or full national. Like you can go and unbundle and exchange. You ever heard of that?
Yeah. I've unbundled exchanges. Yeah,
you've unbundled. So with Swish, did they have a local, national, or just national? Like why haven't you got exchanges? Or why I just got this all?
No. It's okay. So you can, if you're going to leverage Openreach's infrastructure.
That's from each. Are they just like old data centers? You often have an exchange in a town. Yeah.
Or you may have where, for example, it looks like a data center's got power, etc. And you can now actually put your equipment into those. So if you're a partner of Openreach and you're using their network to put your network over there, then you can basically unbundle an exchange, and from that unbundled exchange, you can deliver your services.
Right through.
It varies. There are other models I know other altnets use, and we initially used a lot in Swish. I used to look for dark fibre, so I used to put dark fibre into a cabinet,
dark fibre. Someone else has laid it, and then you rent it, or you should rent it.
Yeah, you just rent it as dark. So in the early 2000s. There was a lot of investment in the UK where people put fibre all over the place, right? And there's also the government opened up a lot of its dark fibre network as well, or sold it off to various people. And so, for example, if there's fibre going between 2 government facilities, or if there's fibre going between colleges or things like this, obviously NEOS networks they provide a lot to the university network, which is JISC.
Right.
You can usually, there's a map. Basically, everyone has a map.
Yeah. So universities have one network. They're all interconnected.
No, the JISC provide. It used to be Janet, and now it's called JISC. So the universities, our university network I haven't looked at it for the last probably 10 years, was fantastic.
Right.
So the universities were all on fibre, moving minimum 10 gigs 10 years ago. That was their minimum plugins,
right?
Because they're passing huge amounts of data around the country, etc.
Yep.
And part of that network was managed by people like NEOS and people like that. Yeah. And so you have this backbone in the UK that is transmitting phenomenal amounts of data between universities and industry, etc. Awesome. And therefore, what you look at is there any spare fibres around?
Yeah.
So this isn't. We originally looked at a location in Oxfordshire, and we knew down this road that this location was just off. There was dark fibre down the road.
Yeah.
between Reading University and Oxford University.
Yeah.
We knew who managed it.
Yeah.
And we contacted them and said, yeah, we've got like loads of spare dark fibre in there. You can break out of this chamber at this location if you wish. And that's what we would have done. Yeah. So you would have taken
a breakout lane.
Basically put up, they'll provide you, let's say, two fibres. Let's say they've got a fibre, they've got fibre bundle going down this road.
Yeah.
And they're not using all that fibre, and they'll give you fibre to break out of it, yes. And then you hook into that fibre and then transmit back to your data centres from there.
That makes sense. Well, I've heard these terms for the last 15 years of my career within telecoms and broadband. It's just really wanted to get...
I'm not the super expert.
No, I know. But
as a founder of a company, you've got to understand something about all of it.
You do.
You can't just be... I mean, some of the technical guys will be saying, "What's he on about?" But I just hope for the layman they get a bit of understanding.
Right, so that's you building out. And then did you have a target of how many properties you wanted to pass over time and things like that?
Yeah, we hit our targets. Yep. Very happy with that. So I was very impressed by the team. So we were going out the door with XGS PON, 10,000 megabits per second, to every single property. Swish put their first spade in the ground in March 2020.
Yeah.
And their first live customer taking an order on a live, fully working network was within 6 months.
Okay.
And that was a fantastic effort by the team to do that. It was during COVID as well, so that was good and bad in the sense all the roads were empty. Yeah. But then the other side of it, you had to get materials, etc., which in some cases was, particularly with tarmac and things like that, you had to look at different ways of getting that.
Did you ever have an office then if you opened in COVID?
Sorry?
Did you ever have an office if you opened in COVID?
Yeah, throughout COVID we were working. Our central office was in London. We had field offices as well. We were very, very careful with everything. So, for example, build crews lived in pockets.
Yeah.
So, for example, gangs lived together, and if the gang got COVID, that gang was down.
Yeah, cool.
But it didn't affect the other gangs. You had to think. You just had to think differently.
Yeah.
And the guys looking after all that side of the business did a fantastic job. And demonstrations, we were lucky that summer because it was a hot summer. Yeah. So a lot of demonstrations were done or work we could do outside. And that made people feel much more comfortable as well. The fact they're outside in the fresh air. Yeah. We had a yard in Buckinghamshire near Marlow.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of work outside because it just meant people could still wear masks if they wished. But it just meant the fact we could keep operating, and we're just sensible and made sure people were safe.
Happy days. So who, when you were at Swish, who was in charge of sales? Who had to come up with a marketing strategy and all that jazz?
Me.
Roger.
Right. Well, actually, I leveraged and worked with a lot of my with an agency I'd worked with for many years. Yeah. I'll give them a plug. BYXP. Alan and Stu owe me a beer. But we together created the brand. I'd worked with them previously. Yeah. They'd created their own business. They'd spun out and created their own business. Yeah. And we just knew how each other worked. We created the brand graphics. We won a Wix award that we didn't even know about. But we found out the fact we got a global Wix award, which for our branding, which they could at least told us.
So the website was built on Wix?
Yeah, the original one was, yes. Original one was. I mean, obviously, as you grow and you go from a startup to a scale up to like fully, you change. Lots of things change. But the flexibility that Wix gave us out the box meant that we could provide a very professional website very quickly.
Hi, it's me again. Just very quickly, another brand that I want to talk about within this episode is Get Crisp. This is an outfit that I've worked with for about the last 5 years, especially within my consultancy. Whenever I needed to bring in external support for marketing, web design, software development, sales automation, this outfit always had me covered. They've even built my websites, Fibrenews, for example. These guys and gals know what they're doing. They are from the telecom and broadband industry. 90% of the staff are all ex-telco or broadband focused. So if you need anything at all from a marketing agency that understands our industry, then please do reach out to these guys. Their podcast episode will be coming soon as well, where we discuss lots of useful tips around SEO, around sales automation, around good conversions when it comes to mail campaigns and everything else in between. So their contact details will be in the body of the description. That is Get Crisp.
And did you go out with what was your most positive sales strategy? Was it field? Was it social? Was it a mix of all? Do you have a preferred sales method? This is different with every ISP. Some purely obsessed with field, others prefer PPC, others will sing the praises of a social media campaign. You'll always try and use a bit of everything, but normally in ISP, I've preferred. Do you have one?
Communication's key and getting your messaging out there. Yeah. So when it comes to marketing, everyone goes on about strategies and stuff. It all boils down to 4 things. Awareness, whether it's a B2B or B2C, you've got to make your product aware to people. Yeah. So today we're talking about Infranomics, awareness, ISPs and people watch your podcast, and that's what makes awareness. So that's where. Then interested in what they do.
Yeah.
And once got interest in what you're doing, then they've got to have a desire for what you do, and then act. So it's AIDA. It's a basic thing of marketing, and they act to buy or they act not to buy, but they take an action. And so you got to look at, if you're going to drive awareness, come back to that point. How do I make myself aware?
Yeah.
So on the back of every single Swish van, it had 10,000 megabits a second.
Yeah.
What? Make them aware of it, get them in the mind, etc. So on the back panel, that's what it had.
Yep.
And then communications, particularly in our business, where all your customers live or potential customers live because you built fibre outside the house. So your marketing communications to them, direct mail, etc., will go through the door, but you've got to make it so that they will read it and engage with it. So you identify. So we're going to come on later and talk about Hermes from Infranomics.
Yeah.
But back then, I was and I still am, a big supporter of identifying the demographic. So Swish went out into the market, and there is a platform that has 66 demographics, and 10 of those covered over 80% of the Swish footprint. So if you're going to do any marketing materials, you focus it at those 10.
Yeah.
Your imagery, your messaging, etc. Yeah. So whether it was direct mail, was it PPC, was it Facebook groups, etc., you make sure you get that message right onto that group and what their pain points are. Yeah. And that is key. And then another thing is, one thing that we did, which wasn't traditional, was we hosted for people who registered interest regular. It was a Thursday night, 6:00. Zoom calls. So I would host a Zoom call where with the team, I would present to anyone who wished to attend what we're doing, give a presentation, and then open up to questions and answers afterwards. Oh. And those questions and answers could last an hour and a half. Yeah. And it was very interesting, the questions you would get asked by consumers, and the insight was phenomenal. You get asked, for example, you get some techies on there saying, well, you really use Next.js PON, what are your data centers and all this sort of thing. And we'd answer those questions, and they become advocates. Yeah. So the super techies, once they understood and they spoke to the super techies on our side, because they would on these open Zoom conferences, they would. But then you got really important questions that were so simple that it was little nuggets. On one call, someone asked, will my email still work on your network? And the answer is yes. Yeah. But these are really important questions. You make, hang on a second, for demographics we're going after, just sometimes you've got to go right to the real basics. Don't think everyone understands. I mean, like we just spoke about a lot of things today, don't assume everyone understands that level of depth.
Yeah, of course.
You've got to bring it back to their level. So if you come to us, and that was another thing that we had was we had our own engineering team, installers, and they would spend time to make sure when they left, the customer was up and running. They could access the internet and they could access their email. So when they left, if you think about it, if you have any problems or changing your internet, you want to be able to access the Wi-Fi, so the Wi-Fi is working, and you get your email. And you get on the internet with it, you're done. And then therefore they then know it's all working and it's fine. Yeah. And then they go straight on the speed test.
Awesome. Right. And you left Swish? What?
Yeah, so I so in September 2023. Yeah. So start of September 2023, so end of August I left Swish. Yeah. I still have some attachments to Swish management, but that's that's all. That's totally cut free from that. Yep. Spent some time working with my son, who has a film production company, Smash Cut Studios. If anyone wants to use them, they're really good fun. You see my LinkedIn post on that. And so I'm a pretty chilled out what I do now.
Nice.
And I got approached by Infranomics.
Yes.
And asked, and it piqued my interest because I believe that there's a market need to help generate revenue, and we've got to be a bit more savvy with that. And it was just a discussion about my thoughts on what you should do, my history, and some of the things we've already discussed about today, and how we can then, how that can be enhanced and help businesses to grow their revenue, because that's really, really important.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to break here and then we'll go into how you met these guys and exactly what they're up to and why I wanted to get you on. Thank you very much. Pause. I was getting nervous pressing play again in case I accidentally delete something. Right. Awesome. So that's your history of the world of fibre. And thank you for asking all of my silly questions. And then, yeah, I got an interest because I'd seen some bits, or I'd heard some conversations around Infranomics, and I knew you guys were utilizing AI. And for me, it didn't really gain too much of my interest at the start because it was more around the build side. And then you recently launched a tool, and I saw some stuff posted on social media regarding the sales aspect. And that's when it did get quite interesting. And I spoke to a couple of guys there and said, can I have a little brief look? Because I always like to know what's happening within the ISP world. And then it kind of, I suppose, I thought, right, this is worth having a broader conversation about, because it did look quite unique. So start off with, how did you get to see the product or meet the guys or understand what Infranomics is? And so let me give an introduction who Infranomics are.
Okay, so Infranomics have now been around probably for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Alex, the CEO, set it up after he, similar to myself a little bit. He had a fibre company in the Borders.
Yeah.
And he'd stepped back from that.
Yeah.
And he was looking at various ways of using technology to make the life for CEOs and SLTs and investors easier.
Yeah.
And started looking at software that could do that with.
Yeah.
So the Infranomics team is very technical.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of brain horsepower in there.
Yeah.
And does a lot of really smart stuff. Yeah. And we'll come on to that in a minute or two. But Infranomics, I mean, I'd known Alex for a while. He knew I was, in my past lives, I've been very interested in demographics, targeting demographics. So as we go back to the story, that as I said, at my core, I believe fibre is an enabler.
Yeah.
And I've always said, and people always laugh, it's an enabler for education, it's an enabler for entertainment, it's an enabler for economic growth. It's entrepreneurs can do so much with fibre when people understand what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a key piece. And as part of that, I've always looked at demographics and tried to figure out, everyone is a consumer. Even in B2B, you're talking to a consumer. That person still is a consumer sort of thing. So I've always been sort of like pushing the use of data and information to improve your efficiency of your sales and marketing organization to get your message out there.
Yeah.
So that is the area that Alex knew me from.
Yeah.
And so earlier this year, we're having a chat and we're talking about it. And Infranomics have 3 products. And I'll come on to the third one, which is Hermes, in a minute. But Alex had originally approached the market with the team with products Atlas and Hercules.
Okay.
Now, Atlas sort of like does country level analysis for telecoms.
Yeah.
It is really smart, and it can be used by investors, altnets, anyone interested in infrastructure type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful tool, and it's starting to move out into the EV space as well. So it's a very powerful tool for identifying where there is infrastructure, where there isn't, and all this type of thing, and then figuring out where the pockets of opportunity are and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
So Hercules is a design modeling engine. When we started Swish, I wish there was products like Hercules out there. And if you're involved at all in network design, etc., strongly recommend you look at Hercules.
Network design is understanding where you're going to build, how much it's going to cost to build, how many materials you need, or what you're...
all of that. And it
trace at that point?
No, but we then look at that with Hermes.
Right.
Which you can do. I mean, if someone from a piece of project work or all tied in as part of their monthly agreement, that sort of thing could be looked at. That's why the 3 unit engines are very powerful individually. Atlas, Hercules and Hermes are very powerful individually, but also together it can give you an incredible picture. So you might get a massive infrastructure investor saying, I need this doing, and we have to use all three tools to do that, all 3 platforms to do that. But But as I said, Hercules can show you how much properties cost to build. It can show you the most efficient way to build that property.
Yeah.
So it's a big help, and it's using computing power and data to do that.
Yeah.
And so much computing power and data that, and as I said, it does it for a fraction of the cost
Of course.
of what I used to pay for in the past.
Yeah.
So those are interesting products and are really exciting, and I like them a lot.
Yeah.
But my passion is back onto is Hermes.
Which this is what caught my eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hermes, so we in that place where obviously I keep going on about being an enabler. Yeah. The messaging has got complicated for consumers with full fiber and part fiber networks. And I've done multiple interviews on the radio and TV where I've had to explain the difference between fiber and copper.
Yeah. Glad someone's doing it.
However, Hermes is an AI tool that we provide as a software as a service, which can allow you to, first of all, it has the majority, if not almost all, the UK full fiber infrastructure in the engine.
Okay.
Now, parts of that are data security is massive for us.
Yeah.
So we live, eat, and breathe data security. So we have several customers' data, and we live, eat, and breathe data security. So that's a really important thing to get out there. The first thing you get out with when you talk to someone is, I'm going to be giving you my customers' data. We don't need your customers' data, just the UPRNs and what's lit and what's not lit. Yeah. We don't want to know that it's Johnny's. It's Johnny. We just that's the sort of level of data we want. We want it. We don't want the person named, etc. who's there. Of course. But data is really important anyway. The security.
Yeah.
And from that we can see, for example, who's overbuilt who.
Yeah.
We can see the properties that are lit with fiber and not.
Yeah.
And when we work specifically with a customer, one of the first things we take from them is their current customer base, and when we run it through the engine, and we come out and identify where they have a service, and we show, for example, okay, in these areas here where you have a service, you've been selling really successfully to Johnny.
Yeah.
However, there's a lot of Johnnies live over here that you've got a service, and the competition and the whole scenario is the same, but you're not selling to them.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't, and again, I've got it over this is not a demographic analysis. Yeah. Hermes has 50 plus data sets in there. Demographics, census, telecom infrastructure. It has so much in there, and it identifies these correlations, the fact that these correlations of people are currently buying your service.
Yeah.
And these are exactly the same or very similar correlation and not buying it. The first point with the customer is, why don't you try them out to find out why you're not selling it in those?
Yeah.
And it may be the fact that the sales focus in that area has been different. It may be, you don't know what it is, but it's a tool that says to, first of all, like to a sales and marketing department, guys, the first thing here is we're going to help get your penetration rate up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is you can then use a tool to try different things. Everyone in sales and marketing lives ABC testing.
Yeah.
You got to try different things, try different messaging. As I was talking to you, try different messaging. What is the message that's getting over? What is the imagery that is making an impact? Yeah. Do you want to run 3 campaigns in parallel and see which different wording has a different impact, going for exactly the same correlated audience?
Yeah.
And that is where Hermes is going to make a big impact, because it isn't just for telecoms. Yes, we're all telecoms guys. The entire team, not the entire team, most of the team have a strong telecoms background, but it can go into other sectors as well. Of course. And we've got some other sectors that come up from over here, curveballs, and like, we're really interested in it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, fine, we're not going to say no, and we're going to have to start working on that. But that's the key thing. So we need to get full fibre out there across the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
It needs to be there for economic growth. We need to get the message to consumers to move to full fibre.
Yeah.
And Hermes, I'd see, is a key tool to helping people get there. And if you're in the sales and marketing area and you're not looking at Hermes, I've got to ask 2 questions. What you're using instead, because it must be pretty good. And secondly, if you're not using something, then maybe you should think about it. Because in the past, you could use various things. Everything's costing more money all the time. I mean, a field team. So let's go on the most expensive piece potentially, which is a field team. Hermes not only identifies the doors to knock, which are the ones that are going to be most probable to get customers from. It also plots you the most efficient walk route. And I was saying one customer, if you're going out there and we give you $120 a day, let's say, and if your person only knocks 60 of them and gets 3 sales, and then you got someone else who knocks 120 and gets 4 sales, which is the best one?
First one.
Yeah, because you still got another 60 doors to go to the following day. And this sort of thing, and also key thing with any AI engine is you need to have a closure of the loop, which is, and this is why we're very keen on we provide a field app for users, because we try and keep it as simple as possible, but we need to know whether they're not in, did they say no, or did they buy a service, or was it something else? Because that closes the loop on the engine on whether to go back sooner or later, and that is really, really important. So that is, because obviously with field teams, you've got to keep as small as possible the list, otherwise you say not in, not in, so not in sort of thing. So that's an add-on of Hermes, which we see is very important for getting that data straight into the engine to keep updating instantly. The next piece is obviously it can parcel up parts of the country into postcodes, the UPRN level, where you can do direct mail. Now, direct mail's got so expensive over the past few years. I mean, when I used to do direct mail as a young marketeer, etc., it was pennies. I mean, shouldn't use this word, but you could carpet bomb an area and you just go on a percentage hit rate. Nowadays, you can be spending pounds per property, so you've got to use your money effectively. And people are saying they want to see what is their customer acquisition cost all the time, what's my return on investment. Again, you can target areas where you've got those sort of correlations that so far have been successful to your product. Now, we did one analysis in the West Country, and it was interesting. We had what we have like green zones, which are sort of like the areas where it really go at. We have amber zones, which are sort of like areas that are probably pretty good, look to your messaging like. And then you've got red zones, which is you're probably going to waste your money there. And in one of the red zones we're looking at, it was mainly students. Now, this current company didn't focus on students. However, in the future, they may try something which is create a 8-month product at a certain price that can be targeted for those communities who want to pick them up. So it's very interesting that currently you may have a product set which fits this correlation, and Hermes will tell you this product you got at the moment fits this correlation. Why don't you talk to them in this area, this area, and this area? But also it gives you the power to look and get your marketing team and the product team and sales team looking at why we're not selling in this area and how can we sell in this area. And again, this is all going to lift the penetration rate. And as you lift the penetration rate, you're going to lift your revenue. And as you lift your revenue, you're then going to have probably time to look at value-added services. So spinning back into something we've spoken about in the past, which is B2B, in the B2B space, value-added services are essential. And that'll happen in the B2C space. So that is all going to be very, very interesting going forward.
It's very much spoken about now, isn't it?
As you play and everything else. But the multiplay, I've got children in their early 20s, and they totally fragmented on what platforms they use. So I can be watching something, really enjoy it, and suddenly pops up, it was a YouTube video we've been watching, like a film on YouTube, and I'm like, because they started it off, I just thought it was normal, sort of like whether it was Netflix or whether it was Apple, and they just flick between all these different platforms. And so that sort of the sort of like a TV attachment, I think it's become less and less, because obviously Netflix want to go direct, Apple want to go direct, Disney want to go direct. They don't want an aggregator in the middle. So that's why the multiplay piece, but maybe a little bit on the VoIP and the voice. I think voice attachment could continue to be important. And mobile, I think mobile will be an interesting one as well. But I think if you've got that is obviously a play that VMO2 and BT are doing, but that we'll see how that works through.
Interesting. So at the end, let's just have a general topical conversation about the fibre world. I've got to talk to you about the technical part, but some areas that I often have conversations with people on. The first one is let's have a look at the market and the consolidation piece that's happening at the moment. I haven't got any direct questions. Have you got any ideas on what you think is going to happen in the market or what consolidation means? Are we going to actually just have a final three? How quick do we see the consolidation coming in? We know it started. We're not really in the race of it yet. Do you think there's going to be another merger type to become a large entrant? Like, who do you think is going to acquire? You probably can't say much about that, but there's loads of questions there.
I think it's always been, I mean, a lot of people are talking at Connected North, and that was talked about there, and there's been various podcasts put out by people about consolidation.
Yeah.
As a person in past lives who's consolidated multiple businesses, it's not easy. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And it takes longer than you expect.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, what is the systems that you're using and what the products you're using in the field. Mm-hmm. So I think, and also what are you buying and what's being sold.
Yeah.
And on the what's being buying and what's being sold, that's a great segue back into Infranomics.
Yeah.
So Infranomics has provided already a service to one of the first acquisitions that's been made.
Okay.
And that is something that the engines can do. As I said before, Atlas, Hercules and Hermes can be used in multiple different ways, particularly by investors.
Yeah.
And one of them actually is in supporting or calling out any risks or opportunities in potential mergers and acquisitions.
Interesting.
And it is very interesting. And it gives you insight, particularly if you're an investor and you're putting a lot of money down on the table, or you're merging companies. It gives you a lot of insight in what you've got and what you haven't got, and what you need to do. And I've always learned from the investors I've worked with that if they know what they're getting, they can make a decision whether they want it or not.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they still want to go ahead. They just renegotiate the price to compensate for the difference in what they thought there was and what there is from an analysis essay. So I think consolidation will take place.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be some smart work done up front.
Yeah.
I think people need to fully understand what networks are in the ground. Yeah. I think a lot of the UK remains uncovered. If you look at the supply chain, I think the supply chain has not sold as much as how much is supposed to be out there. Yeah. And I always say that if you ever, I often say this to the regulators, etc. If you want to know how much is being sold out there, just ask for the invoices for the equipment that you need to build networks.
Yes.
So if you say that you've supplied, you built 100,000 premises, and you've only bought enough stuff to build 75,000 premises, where's your other 25? I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there as well. I think I know from the analysis that we've done in Infranomics, there is still a lot of first mover advantage out there, which we discussed earlier. And also from the Infranomics, I also am aware of the fact some of the first movers may be under threat sooner rather than later. Yeah. And again, they can probably defend their positions, because I think as a first mover, I think you should be rewarded for making that first inroad into the market, and trying to push full fibre against other products that are called fibre, and trying to get consumers on board. Yeah. So consolidation is going to come. I think it's going to be slower than people expect.
Yeah.
I think investors at the moment are being cautious. So I think they've gone probably into an overcautious mode. Mm-hmm. However, you've got to remember, we come back to what my passion is, fibre is just an enabler.
Yeah.
And you will make money on value-added services, many of which haven't even been created today. Yeah. And so if you look at it as an infrastructure play, which a lot of these are, you're looking out 7, 15, 20 years, 25 years. Yeah. If you look at that play, then consolidation probably does make sense for you to consolidate.
Yeah.
If you consolidate, then I think you very quickly got to standardize.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always learned, and is the fact, try and have one product, like one router, one ONT, one OLT, or at most two.
Yeah.
So that everything's simple.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, and that'll take time.
Yeah.
and there's probably some legacy pieces in there when you do consolidations, which you weren't expecting, which you have to budget for.
Yeah.
I mean, like technical things in your networks, etc.
Yeah.
But I do think that'll happen. How many players will there be? There was a survey, and some people said maybe 5 players. I think the UK market has been held back because there hasn't been enough competition.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been primarily 1 player.
Yeah.
Stroke 2.
Yeah.
I think having more than 3, 4, maybe sustained 5 long term in the main cities and towns.
Yeah.
I think there might be an opportunity for rural providers who may eventually be the sole provider in those areas and have to open their networks up to others, etc.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I still think there is a lot of fibre still to be built.
Yeah.
And people go ping, consolidation, ping, build.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of building to do.
There is.
And I think people need to use smart tools like the Infranomics product. Again, give it a plug. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Use really smart tools to figure out where you still have first mover advantage.
Yeah.
Also, where you've built and you can build off a cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've done some work for one ISP who has cabinets. Yes, so there's still, in my view, a lot of the UK not covered.
Yes.
Where people can get first mover advantage. Mm-hmm. I still think that full fibre has got to be communicated properly. And I think we've got to stop using the word fibre for copper services.
Yeah.
And people just got to know that, because, as I keep saying, it's an enabler.
Yeah.
And if people don't know what they can do with it, they won't try new things. We need growth.
Yeah.
And this is a technology platform that we've got throughout the UK. I mean, the UK has basically jumped from ADSL and VDSL copper networks straight, like with to 10 gig XGS-PON.
Yeah.
And now what can you do with that is phenomenal, right? And obviously, as you saw, Netomnia is supplying a 8,000 megabit per second service.
Yeah.
I have a video, look on YouTube, of me showing a speed demonstration that Swish went over 9,000. So I have that for Jeremy. Jeremy will probably fire something into me, because he's a good friend of mine. He'll probably fire something in about that, etc. But I think that's brilliant that they've got that out there.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, look, you can do 8,000 megabits per second. What can you do with it?
Yeah.
Now, for some customers, just be an ego thing.
Yeah.
I've got a flash car, I've got a big house, and I've got 8 gigs,
Yeah.
right? But for some people, they'll be able to do incredible stuff. Imagine YouTubers, etc., like that. I know we, in a past life, in the previous ISP I was with, we provided a service to a YouTuber in Essex who, he had millions and millions of followers, and he was a very, very wealthy individual. And his one comment was, how much data can you put down the fibre line?
Interesting.
Yes, it's... And that's his business.
Yeah, of course.
And this will open things up. So we've got to be creative. We've got to provide things, and we've got to see what people enable and what they do. So that's going to be interesting times. But as I said, fibre still needs to get out there.
Yeah.
Consolidation will happen.
Yeah.
When, how that does, and all the effort and time that'll take, that'll be quite interesting too.
Are you going to be at Connected Britain?
Absolutely. So
That'd be a good chance.
Infranomics are there. So we're in the startup section.
Yeah.
Quite a few of the team are going to be there. We'll be doing lots of demonstrations. So a big thing for us is demonstrating the product.
Yeah.
When you just talk to someone about it, they say, you got a demographic tool, haven't you? No, this is not a demographic tool, right? Come and have a look at it. And when you start looking at it, it opens up more questions.
Yeah.
And my takeaway from the whole thing is, give it a try.
Yeah.
Because if it does half of what it says on the tin, it's going to have an impact.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people will be. I don't think people will be disappointed if they give the product a go.
Perfect. Right. I think that's probably a good area to end then. So obviously, I will put your details in the body of the description wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. Or by all means, the majority of our audience probably will be attending Connected Britain. So do go and see Alistair and his team and get a visual on this product, because that is what grabbed my attention, and I highly recommend it. So Alistair, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Johnny, appreciate it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you. Good, cool.
Oh,